Hey guys, another video from the Anti-Nerd here, and today I'm bringing my first comic book review, and I'm gonna start with X-Men issue number 1, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby, two legends from the Marvel company. So let's analyze a little bit of the cover art here, and I'm also gonna explain how this comic book reviews are gonna work. So I'm gonna do always every page so you can have a reading experience with me. You can also pause the video and read. I hope that's clear enough for you guys. And this is a reprint from the 90s of the original issue published in 1963. We can see Iceman, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, which is not blue, Angel, and Professor X, which is not in the cover, and of course Magneto. So for a first issue, we are introduced to a lot of characters. And you're gonna see some ads here from the original issue. It starts with Professor X. He's seated not in a wheelchair, just in a chair in a mansion, and the narrator mentions that a man is silently thinking in a chair where he's actually communicating through telepathy with his students. So when you don't see the little arrow there, it means that he's communicating through telepathy. So first thing he does is call his X-Men, which is some powerful young men, to do some sort of training, which we don't know what training is going to be. So that's the first panel, already introduced a lot of characters from a first page, and you can tell that Professor X in this issue, he is very static, like he's mostly a mind type of guy. So they concentrate a lot of his powers into his mind. As I said, this issue was written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby, which there's a lot of discussion on the credit and where people stand on that, because there was some legal suits between those, because Jack Kirby felt like he should sue Stan Lee for his proper recognition. Stan Lee says, he claims that he first conceptualized the character and then Jack Kirby draw for him, while Jack Kirby, he claimed the opposite, that he drew the story, he drew the characters, and then Stan Lee came there with his writing techniques and then filled it out. So which version do you think was true? I think my personal take is that the drawers, they are more responsible for the iconic characters, as they wouldn't be as iconic as we know without that specific design. So I think in that sense, Marvel, of the historical importance of the characters, it came mostly from the designs rather than just the concept. However, the concept is very important, and Stan Lee was a very narcissist type of guy. So I don't know, I'm more with the artists here, like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. So second page here, the Professor X, he invites them to do this training, right? Which involves pretty much some challenges in this open room. And then you see that each character has some sort of ability, some sort of power. So there's also a tone of humor here with all these characters, especially with Iceman. Even Beast makes a few jokes. I would say Cyclops and Angel, maybe they stood more by the serious side. So you can see in each little situation there, the powers, they are somehow revealed, right? And you can see also Iceman as the top comedian of the group, because he draws himself as a snowman. And also he makes this rebound effect with ice, so he can rebound the ball that Beast throws at him, while Cyclops is mostly close to Professor X right here, which I don't think they mention Xavier. They usually call him Professor X on this issue. In Brazil, where I come from, he's mostly known as Professor Xavier rather than Professor X. Okay, so they continue to do this training, right? So let's flip the page here. And there's another ad. You can tell that Cyclops is very faithful to his mentor, Professor X, because he gets mad about the ball that they are throwing, almost hitting Professor X, right? So now Cyclops, he reveals his power, which is the blasting laser effect. And you can tell that's really powerful because it totally breaks this massive block of ice made by Iceman. And as soon as all this section of the training ends, Professor X, he tells the students that he's going to introduce the first girl to the X-Men. And then they all get super nervous and they want to meet this girl. So there's no mention here of any particular love interest by Scott Summers. In fact, that's the panel that all the names are mentioned, and Cyclops is not named Scott Summers in the first issue. He's named Slim Summers. So throughout this issue, they call him Slim Summers, which it seemed to be a nickname, but it's quite odd because I never heard that. So he introduced Jean Grey and he also calls her Marvel Girl, which was the name that Marvel used during the early days of Jean Grey. Of course, later on, they kind of abandoned that because it wasn't as popular, and there was also Captain Marvel and all that. But in this issue, he introduced right away, oh, she's Marvel Girl, Jean Grey's Marvel Girl. And they don't know what power a Marvel Girl exactly has. So right away, she is very confident about her personality. Is not as dull character as the Jean Grey from the cartoon of the 90s, which I don't personally like that much. I think it's kind of like a blunt character without much personality. And here she's very confident, and she already shows her power through the moving chair right there, and also she moves the book. So it's revealed that she has telekinesis, right, which is the power of moving objects with just her mind. So very interesting and very cool power. By now we already know so many characters and their powers. I think so far it is a great issue right here. There's also another thing in this page that Professor X, he mentions that he thinks that he's probably the first mutant because his parents worked on a bomb project. So it is the first time that somehow mutation is associated with maybe radiation or nuclear power of some sort of thing. So yeah, he thinks that he's the first mutant because of that. And I never seen this in other mediums. So let me know in the comments, what do you know about that? And if that's something interest. I mean, we all know that mutant powers are not realistic, so I wouldn't bother that much about that. Another thing, flipping the page here, is that Professor X tells Jean Grey that his mission is to use the mutant powers against evil mutants. And then we are introduced to Magneto. In this first issue, there's no mention of the origin story of Magneto, or if him and Xavier were friends or something like that. But what is clear is that Magneto is the villain, and he portrays the evil mutant that not only does not want to protect human beings, but rather they want to destroy them. And he believes in some sort of mutant supremacy, right? He even mentions in that issue the thing with the Homo superior. That's his personal belief on this gene superiority. It's kind of like a Nazism type of thinking. There's a lot of parallels on the X-Men and some of the stuff that happened in the 20th century. If you know the movie First Class, you probably remember the scene where Magneto stops a few missiles during the Cuban crisis. So I am sure that was based on this first issue, because that's what Magneto does on this first issue, and that's how he introduced his name. He doesn't say his power, but it's pretty obvious that he uses magnetism as a power to control stuff, because he writes a message on the sky, right? Writing his name Magneto. So he pretty much makes a fool of the American army right here, messing with the tanks and the missiles, So Magneto is creating this crisis in this military facility that somehow the Professor X gets to know about it, and then he calls his X-Men to suit up to face that crisis that's being created by this evil mutant called Magneto. So that's the first time we see Jean Grey in her costume. It is covering the top of her head, which is very cool, very classic look. They would also continue that look in the X Factor, but they would change, of course, the outfit. But that's a very cool redhead look of her. And then there's also a scene where Angel suits up, and it shows how he can dress himself with normal clothes. He puts like a belt in his wings. So that's a cool detail to show that, like, oh, okay, they have to adapt somehow to look normal. But they don't explain much about Cyclops and the thing about him not being able to look straight into someone's eyes or anything like that. So after they are all suited up, they start to face Magneto, and Magneto's pretty strong, but then you can also see that Cyclops' beam is really powerful because it breaks the barrier that Magneto's creating with his powers, right? So together they are more strong. So they go after Magneto. And here's an issue of the Spider-Man that's being promoted here. So this is issue number 4, and it is the first year of the Spider-Man magazine. As you guys know, Spider-Man was first appeared in 62, but then his magazine is also from 63, same as this issue here of X-Men, okay? So another page, we have more of the battle against Magneto, and each X-Men use their power to stop the missiles, to avoid Magneto's attack. And then Magneto throws a full metal thing with the fuel, so they can so he can blow them up, and it quite doesn't work because Cyclops makes a hole, like a tunnel in the ground, using his blast beam. So yeah, that's a very cool thing. I never thought about how powerful was the beam of Cyclops, and now I realize that always has been, since first issue, a very strong device from the X-Men. So the issue ends right here with them making Magneto flee the scene. They of course don't kill him, but he's clearly defeated, and he's only defeated because the X-Men, they combine their powers, right? And they combine their mental abilities, their strategy. And they're guided by this guy called Professor X, which in the final little draw here, he says, "Return to me, my X-Men." So that phrase that you see a lot of people do and write on the internet, "to me, my X-Men," as if it's like, oh, to me, that's my X-Men. Actually, that's incomplete. The phrase is "return to me, my X-Men." So I know that it's probably used after that, but the original phrase, and let's assume that everything here in this comic book is totally canon, right? So the information we're gonna base on, it regards a lot to do with this issue here, because that's the two minds that created the X-Men. So very cool issue. I very much liked it reading. I think that I wouldn't even read that carefully if I wasn't doing the video. And it's cool because I have the opportunity to show you guys like as a reading experience, and people who don't own the comic, they can read it, and also we can talk about it. And I hope you guys engage this content and comment on the comment section, what do you think about this content? What do you think about this review? If you think that is adding somehow to your comic book knowledge, and also making you think about this sort of Marvel universe, especially the comic book universe. So I'm gonna give a grade 10 out of 10. I think that's an amazing first issue comic book for the X-Men. I'm very happy to have done this video with you guys. I'm not gonna continue doing this classic X-Men phase. I'm gonna talk which comic books I'm gonna cover here in my review. So since I have all the 24 issues and the giant size of Astonishing X-Men, which is a run that a lot of people love, I'm gonna do a full review on that. So I don't know, it might take a while to complete because it's a lot of issues, but I'm gonna release every issue is just one video, very in-depth analysis of the Astonishing X-Men, okay? There's also, I'm gonna cover the Excalibur first issues. I think I'm probably gonna do 10 issues, maybe first 7, but probably the first 10 issues of Excalibur. And we're gonna also dive into that and compare, you know, how a comic from the late 80s compared to a more modern comic book. But I'm very pleased to analyze more X-Men with you guys. There's also some other comic books that I want to cover, such as the Venom arc from the Ultimate Spider-Man. So if you're excited about that, please let me know, because I don't know when I'm gonna do that. And also Daredevil, The Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. It is definitely on my list. And yeah, if you have any suggestions of comic books I might own, if you want to ask if I own them, if I can review them, of course, bring it on. I want to build some sort of community here that likes this Marvel content and in-depth analysis of comic book, and also people that are interested to read the comic books and maybe they don't have access to the comic book. So why not bring the comic book to them, you know? So yeah, 10 out of 10, very good comic book. As I mentioned, a lot of characters are introduced. Xavier is a very cool leader, very mysterious, and the other characters just have so much personality, and there's already a villain. So very good first issue of X-Men. I do love X-Men, and I hope to see you guys again here at the Anti-Nerd channel. And stay tuned to more content, and bye-bye.